Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Glad to have you with us this week. Later on the show, we're going to hear from John Robitaille. You remember him, I'm sure, of the Johnson & Wales Center for Entrepreneurship, where he works now, about its selection as the site for a new national business program. But first, we're going to turn to a topic that's been the talk of the town in recent weeks, and that is the PawSox Stadium proposal. The team owners are in private negotiations with the Raimondo administration to see if they can reach a deal after the first one proved very unpopular, but opponents of a stadium deal are taking their campaign public. This week, the Blackstone Valley Tourism Council brought Victor Matheson, one of the country's best-known sports economists, to Pawtucket to share his critique of taxpayer subsidies for sports stadiums. I spoke with Matheson for a few minutes before his speech, and here's what he had to say. First off, what is your top-line take on the stadium proposal right now? Should Rhode Island do it or not?
Well, certainly the original proposal that was floated back when the owners took control, which essentially was well over $100 million of taxpayer subsidy, was really an awful deal for taxpayers and was, of course, met with, I think, almost universal condemnation.
Now, we were told in part by the owners that, yes, it's a lot of money, but this is how this world happens. These stadium deals have a huge amount of public subsidy, and that's what they're looking for. Did this look like what you see in other places, the original ask from the PawSox owners?
Well, we've certainly seen some deals like this in the past, but that doesn't mean that these haven't been terrible deals for those cities as well. We've seen a significant reduction in the amount of taxpayer subsidies going on, of course, since the Great Recession here in the last 5 or 6 years. And maybe the most comparable stadium deal was one in Charlotte, playing in the International League here. It's the newest stadium in the league. And that stadium had about $16 million in public subsidy, not $120 million in public subsidy. So, look, I'm not sure I would have been in favor of even the $16 million, but we're not even talking about in the same, ballpark.
What's your case against subsidizing ballparks at all? People like baseball. They think we've been subsidizing McCoy already. Why do you think that's something that needs to be looked more closely at?
Well, there's lots of things we like that we don't subsidize. A typical multiplex, a 16-screen multiplex, brings in as many people as McCoy Stadium does every year. But we would think it would be crazy for the state to build a movie theater. Restaurants, shopping malls, they bring in a lot more people every year than baseball stadiums. But we don't lose our mind there and build shopping malls for private investors. So why do we think baseball is any different?
What would be your recommendation? The governor is still interested in doing this deal on ways to mitigate what you see as way too much taxpayer money going out the door. What should they be looking at and structuring if there is a deal to make it, in your view, fairer?
Well, you could look just up north at Gillette, and that was a stadium that was built almost entirely with private money, so the Crafts built the stadium there. But the state was very generous in making sure that the infrastructure was in place to really make that a usable stadium. So obviously a lot better getting in and out of Foxborough now than it was 2 decades ago under the old stadium. Again, that's thanks to government money making interstate, or Route 1 there much, much more accessible. And of course, that's exactly what good government does, is great infrastructure allows businesses to thrive. We should make it easy for the new owners to build their stadium wherever they want. We should provide infrastructure to make sure that fans can get in and out of that stadium. But once you start going much beyond that, you have to question whether that's good use of taxpayer money.
One other question for you, because I know you're going in to give your speech here, but what do you think of their argument that you need to have an urban downtown ballpark versus the current here in Pawtucket McCoy Stadium situation? Do you think there's validity to their case for that?
There's certainly something nice about urban stadiums as a kind of an anchor to promote general economic development. Mind you, that's going to be development that's going to benefit downtown Providence at the cost of everywhere else in both the city and the state. So you really are making a real decision to choose to support one part of the state rather than another.
All right, thank you, Professor.
My pleasure.
That was sports economist Victor Matheson of the College of the Holy Cross up in Worcester speaking with me before his speech in Pawtucket this week on the controversial stadium proposal. And we have much more about Matheson's discussion on our website. I sat in for it. It was very interesting. That's on WPRI.com. Just click Ted Nisi under news. You can read my report from there. We're going to take a break now in Executive Suite, but don't go away. Coming up next, John Robitaille of the Johnson & Wales Center for Entrepreneurship talks about its selection as Rhode Island's site for the new 1 Million Cups program. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and happy today to be joined by John Robitaille. You might remember him as a Republican candidate for governor in 2010, as well as a close advisor to Governor Don Carcieri, former Governor Don Carcieri, but he is now the head of the Johnson & Wales Center for Entrepreneurship, Friedman Center, I believe, right?
The Larry Friedman Center.
Right. John, good to see you.
Good to see you, Ted.
Funny to have us both out of our political hats, putting on our business hats today, but kind of a pleasure, right?
It is.
So before we get started on this 1 million cups, you have the cup here. We're going to talk a bunch about that. I want to start off, I don't know how many people at home will have heard yet of the Johnson & Wales Center for Entrepreneurship. So can you tell us, how long has it been around? How long have you been running it? And what do you do there?
Sure. Well, the center was commissioned in 2002 after Larry Friedman. So it's called the Larry Friedman International Center for Entrepreneurship. And I've been there about 4 years, almost coming up on 4 years. Time flies. And we do a lot for student entrepreneurs, whether they're an entrepreneurship major, a culinary major, technology, equine, doesn't matter. If it's a young person who has an entrepreneurial spirit, who wants to explore the possibility of developing a new product, a new technology, or just take the passion of cooking or building things to that next level, we can meet with them, help them vet their idea. If it needs a prototype, we can take them over to the lab, and we have 3 3D printers where we can build things for them. Help them with alpha testing, beta testing. If it's a small business model, we help them with business plans, doing market research. So there's a lot we can do, and we rely pretty heavily on a great cadre of Johnson Wales University alumni as mentors. So we have a mentor matching program, and we even have, last year, Johnson Wales approved us raising money and building out a Wildcat Venture Fund so students can apply for seed funding. In fact, this afternoon is a committee meeting, and 3 teams of students are pitching their ideas for some seed funding. So we do an awful lot at the center.
Now, so people understand, is it is it a program you enroll in like for your degree in entrepreneurship, or is it any student at Johnson & Wales can come to you and take part?
Great question. It's the latter. Any student can apply. And I don't care whether the student has just taken a walk on the beach on Sunday and come in on Monday with this great idea for a t-shirt company, or it's more sophisticated and have done some research and have a plan. We can take them through the process, and there's basically 3 levels. There are the students that we want to encourage to be there, come listen to speakers, get a little bit of coaching, use the co-working space. And then there are students who are advanced a little bit further, and they can apply for our accelerator program, where they get some dedicated space, they get a locker, they get a personal coach and mentor, they get access to some legal counseling, some accounting advisory services to set up books. And then the final level are those who are really ready to launch, and we help them with launch preparation and can set them up to apply for seed funding. So any student that walks in, we want to serve. And we've worked, Ted, with a couple of years ago with 2 equine majors who had an idea for this variable spur to ride in competition. So you don't have to take your whole boot off and everything. You can just click one on and click one off. The ideas that come up, the students in technology, everyone's creating a mobile app for something. It's just fascinating. It's thrilling to be there, and the
now, how
energy
much
level.
is there? A lot of, I assume, knowing Johnson Wales student profile, there'd be some interest. I mean, how much do you see a large chunk of the student body come through, or at least have some interest?
A good question. Last year, the university conducted a career progression study, and they reached out to thousands of alums, and I think just shy of 4,000 responded to this survey. And one of the questions were, have you ever started a business or been part of a startup in the first 10 years out of the university since graduation? 37.7% of the respondents said yes.
Wow, 1 in 3, yeah.
That is a huge number. So it leads you to believe that Johnson Wales University offers the types of majors that lend themselves to starting businesses. Again, culinary, baking and pastry, technology, fashion. It just runs the whole gamut of possibilities. And a lot of, especially the millennials now, you hear them all a lot say, I don't want to work for the suits, or I don't want to work for the man. And so they have that, at least the exploration phase. So they come in the door. And then part of our job too is to test them.
Yeah.
And to see if we can scare them away by telling them the good, the bad, and the ugly of starting a business.
So you're honest about entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows and you'll all be Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. But everyone wants to be the next Zuckerberg and be a billionaire, and it's not easy. And you have to have I think a personality, and we try to draw that out of them to be able to accept failure, bounce back, be inquisitive, pivot. Pivot's a great word in the Entrepreneurship Center. So entrepreneurship is not linear. It goes all over the place, and you may start with an idea, and the more you learn about your product or the potential market, you pivot a little bit to better satisfy those needs. And the funniest thing that I have to tell a student entrepreneur is, I don't care what you think of your idea. What do your potential customers think?
Yes, that's the hardest thing sometimes people think. Same thing I say about a story sometimes to my colleagues. So you're here this week because you announced Johnson & Wales, the Entrepreneurship Center, has been selected for this 1 million cups program that the Kauffman Foundation, we'll explain the name in a minute, but you have the cup here, the example, the cups for the 1 million cups program. So what is it? What is this thing and why you've been selected for it?
Okay, it started about 2 years ago. The Kauffman Foundation is based in Kansas City, and they are one of the preeminent supporters of education and entrepreneurship specifically.
Really respected, well-known group.
Well-known, very well respected. And this program started 2 years ago in Kansas City, and they originally thought it was just going to be for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And a neighboring town heard about it, and they wanted to do one. And within 1 year, they had, I think it was 26 locations. And now they're up to 74. So we heard about the program, and there just happened to be a trained community Kauffman organizer in Rhode Island who hadn't really got traction yet on it. So her name is Stephanie Karras, and she came to us and said, hey, would Johnson & Wales consider applying to be a host site? So we got approval, we signed up for it, and we got granted the license to operate the Kauffman program. It's their program at Johnson & Wales. And Wednesday of this week, we had the coordinator from Kansas City, her name is Taylor Brown, who's the national coordinator for the 1 Million Cups program, fly in for actually it was our 4th week, but we made this one a special event. And we had about 60 people in the audience. Most of them were either nascent entrepreneurs or had started businesses. We had some great stories, a lot of questions and interactions. The whole purpose of the program is to get entrepreneurs in front of a group of people who are thinking about it, maybe just kicking the tires, and to learn about their journeys and to share. And one question we always ask the presenters are, what can the entrepreneurial community in Providence do for you? Is it networking? Is it access to someone who you'd like to see? So it's really all about connecting people, like-minded people who want to either be their own boss, launch a product, or a business.
And why the name 1 Million Cups?
So we had to go out and get a coffee sponsor, and we did.
I'll turn it toward as we have this. You can see, I don't know if we can zoom it all there, but you see the it's just 1 million cups of coffee. So a lot of caffeination, I suppose.
And I have to keep track of every cup that's. Did
you have to hit 1 million in Rhode Island?
Well, they're hoping at some point that on any Wednesday of any week, there'll be 1 million people across the globe drinking coffee at approximately the same day, talking about entrepreneurship. So the excellent coffee company, Bill K. Post, is our coffee sponsor, and so he brought in truckloads of coffee for us to keep us caffeinated. And Johnson & Wales is hosting it every single Wednesday, 9 a.m., 10 Abbott Park, which is right next to the Beneficent Church up from PPAC. That's where the Entrepreneurship Center is. Public's welcome. If anyone would like to present or pitch, they can go to 1 Million Cups, the numeric, millioncups.com/Providence, and sign up to be a presenter. It's as simple as that.
And so that was one of my questions. It's open to everybody. This is not just for Johnson & Wales students. You're hosting it.
Yes, we're hosting it, and what we have been able to do every week and will continue to do is to have at least one student or student team and then one entrepreneur from the community come in. So there's 2 a week. They get approximately 6 minutes to talk about their idea and take about 20 minutes of questions and answers from the audience. So it's a great format.
How's it been going so far? You said you've had a couple of weeks, the big one this week. How is it?
It's been going great. We started off slow. I think we had 12 people, then went up to 20, then 25, and then this week we had over 60 people in the audience. We had to shut off the questions. It could have gone for 2 hours, which some of the communities already have reached about 100 people showing up So it's just a great opportunity for someone who's looking for help. And Ted, what I've found is that, especially in the greater Providence area, the entrepreneurial community is very willing to share. And to give people the benefit of their experiences from having hit roadblocks or obstacles.
And it's interesting because one thing we hear a lot, I think, on this show when people come through is the importance of mentoring. I remember, I want to say, and I apologize if this is wrong, if it was Walker Williams, who's at Teespring, said when he was on, we asked, what led you to stay in Rhode Island after you were in college here and start your company? He said it was because he had such support. And he said that was the most important thing to him, that he had support in people. I mean, is that more crucial than people realize for these younger entrepreneurs?
It's two things, very crucial. First is mentor, a good mentor. And we're very careful about selecting mentors, especially for our students, because I believe it's they should subscribe to the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm.
Right.
So you may want to be generous and want to share, but you really need to be qualified to be a good mentor, because you could change the course of that student or his or her venture and maybe lead them down the wrong road. So we want to make sure that an individual is really qualified to be a mentor. And the second thing, and probably the biggest obstacle for student entrepreneurs, is access to capital, seed funding. And especially today, when you look at the average student across the country is carrying maybe $30,000 of student debt, and 9 months out of graduation, they have to start paying it back. So a lot of students don't have access to capital, which is why I think the university, I'm so excited about the approval of putting this Wildcat Venture Fund together so that they can have access to a few $1,000s here and there to get them, some of the initial equipment or funding for legal fees to formally form their business as an S Corp or whatever, LLC or something. So it's enough to get them a little bit of traction. And then the next level we tell them are the 3 F's, family, friends, and fools, to see if they can raise some money on their own. And now all of the students really know about crowdfunding. So it's pretty simple. GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Very easy to put a little video together, fill out an app, and total strangers start giving you money.
Yeah.
And when I first heard about it, I said, "What? Is that
really
legal?
happen?
Is that legal?" But it does happen, and it's a lot of our students have been very successful in raising money.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with John Robitaille about what's going on at Johnson & Wales and the Center for Entrepreneurship. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and we're talking today with John Robitaille. He leads up the Johnson & Wales Center for Entrepreneurship. You might remember him as a candidate for governor who nearly won an election a few years ago, but now he's helping young entrepreneurs figure out their futures. I'm curious, you spend a lot of time talking with students, John, would-be entrepreneurs, whether they're really going to do it or they're just thinking it through. What do they want to start? What comes up a lot in terms of businesses, industries that they're really interested in your student?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the young people today obviously are totally glued to their screens, their smartphones. And a lot of students come up with ideas for mobile apps, for access to anything you can possibly think of. But we also see a lot of students who have more traditional small business models, food trucks, restaurants.
Yeah, food trucks. I saw you in the Journal talk about that the food trucks has become a bigger thing.
It has become a big thing, but it's also a very challenging thing, especially in the state of Rhode Island. I was speaking with an owner-operator just this week about getting a food truck started up, because it's supposed to be mobile, yet you have 39 cities and towns all have separate regs about what food trucks can do, where they can park, what kind of permits they need, what the fees are.
Remember Cranston cracked down on it for a bit?
Exactly. So trying to navigate that maze sometimes can get frustrating. Plus, there are not a lot of rules that are specifically in terms of the health department and building codes for food trucks. So a lot of times the inspectors will look at blueprints and specs for a bricks and mortar restaurant and say, well, the sink or the burners have to be so far away from the, and you're going, well, I've only got 3 inches to stick it in. So it is a challenge, but I think things are changing as there's more knowledge being exchanged about those challenges.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you were talking about other challenges, the access to capital question. I mean, do you think there's some solution on the table that isn't being had for companies in Rhode Island, especially to find that amount of money? Or do you think, is it a market failure? I mean, what do you think after a couple of years talking to a lot of folks about that?
There's still a lot of discussion taking place, and there are some angel groups that are beginning to not lower their standards, but lower the amount that they're willing to invest. Because for a long time, once you got beyond some initial seed funding, there, as we said offline here, there's a valley of death there after maybe a couple $100,000 to maybe that $5 million. No one really wants to invest in that space. But again, at Johnson & Wales, with many of the ventures we deal with, it's more of a small business model. So they don't need the millions of dollars to start up that some of these tech companies do. And their journey to profitability is usually a lot shorter, whereas the ROI for people investing in tech companies, although it could be a lot greater, maybe 3 years out, 5 years out. So the smaller business models, whether it's a restaurant, a fashion business, or a more traditional type retail operation, they normally can gather enough money, bootstrap it on their own. And when they start getting a little bit of positive cash flow, then they can start expanding. So their obstacle isn't as great as someone who wants to launch a highly scalable technology.
So Johnson & Wales, I was saying to you before we started the show today, I think it sometimes gets overshadowed in Rhode Island higher education by whether it's Brown or URI or something else. You've spent a couple of years working there now, I'm sure learning a lot more than you knew about Johnson & Wales. What do you think people don't know about this university? It's got a big footprint.
Yeah, well, I get surprised every day still. There are nuggets of excellence throughout that university. And in fact, we've just launched, you might have heard some radio spots, and I think soon we'll have some TV spots out for a new branding campaign. But we have an excellent physician's assistance program that I believe we had last year, 1,400 applicants for 40 slots. We're going to be launching a biology program. We have a nutrition program. We're getting into more food science. Our technology and engineering, we're building a new building for that. So yeah, there are a lot, but we have such a strong brand in the culinary arts that when you have a strong brand, it's sometimes difficult to say, hey, we do this too, and we do that too, because it's it's such a well-known brand in the hospitality and culinary
it's all
business.
chefs.
Yeah, no, it's not. But you know what interesting is happening, Ted, too, there's a collision now between culinary and technology. And they're coming up with mobile apps to track food trucks, or to track calories, or what's in your food. There are also a huge intersection between health and culinary. We have a program going on with Tulane, being able to better educate physicians in the field as the value of what people eat, as how that reflects in terms of what ailments they may have or how you can mitigate some of those things.
All right, only about a minute left.
Sure.
I have to ask you, you've been around politics and government a long time. What advice do you have for Governor Raimondo on what she should do as she tries to turn around Rhode Island's economy?
I think she should do what she said during the campaign, and I think she's doing it. Stay focused on jobs, stay focused on the economy. And I think she's probably learning, having been in office now a few months, that she's got to deal with the General Assembly, and some of the regulatory hurdles that we have for businesses need to be changed. And the one pet peeve I still have is that $500 minimum tax for a business that gets started. And for a startup, that's a lot of money. So if anybody's listening in the General Assembly out there, take another look at that $500.
And that was actually just mentioned by Senate President Paiva-Wheat as something to use the extra revenue that's coming in right now. 15 seconds left. Why do you hate it so much?
Because I've heard so many small business owners tell me that it's an obstacle.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that $500 because they don't have the revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's sort of an insult tax. I mean, you could lose $10,000 that year and still have to pay income tax of $500. So it is a challenge. And I think that there's enough people now saying, look, we have a lot of people that want to start businesses in Rhode Island. We want to keep them here too, because we don't want them to migrate away.
So, all right. Well, John Robitaille, you're good about keeping to the time, which I love. You're used to us with debates and stuff. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Again, it's 1 million cups. You can find out more about it on the Johnson & Wales website, and or just Google it up. You'll find it. Stick with us on Executive Suite next week. We'll have the president of RISD, and you can catch every show on WPRI.com. See you back here next week.